All right, so we are at 4:05, so let's get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Like I mentioned, today's presentation is going to be recorded, and later on it will be uploaded to YouTube so that people can see that link. And we will give an opportunity for people to ask questions. You can ask your questions in the chat, and we'll try to keep up with that as much as possible during the presentation, but most of those questions will probably be answered at the end of the presentation. You will also have an opportunity to unmute yourselves and ask questions directly that way as well. And then I'll also be sending out an email after today's presentation with a copy of the presentation slides and other resources that I'll discuss. All right, next slide, please. All right, so first thing before we begin, an important thing to say is that this is not intended to be legal advice for everyone, because everybody's immigration situation is different. So we encourage you to actually have a one-on-one discussion with an attorney or some other licensed immigration legal professional in a confidential setting, because obviously this would be confidential information, your personal information. So please, if you ask questions today, please ask questions that do not reveal any personal information or confidential information. We can, of course, answer those questions in an actual appointment that you can make with us. All right, next slide. All right, so our agenda. So first off, who are we? Who's talking to you today? Who is CARECEN, our organization? What is DACA? The history of DACA, a very brief history, because it's wild. What happened in this recent court case that y'all have been hearing about? What does that court case actually mean? And then we'll kind of switch gears. And for those of you who are here that think you might be eligible for applying for DACA for the very first time, we'll go into what the eligibility is for DACA, what documents you need to provide, what are the risks and benefits, of course, and then also advance parole, which is something else that is affected by this recent case. And then, of course, how you can make an appointment with us, and then opening for questions. Next slide, please. All right, I'm going to let Veronica take over here for a moment.
Hi, everyone. So a little bit about who we are. We're part of the CARECEN team. CARECEN stands for Central American Resource Center. Our vision is just to make a community where we can live in peace and dignity while enjoying economic well-being, social justice, and political empowerment. And a bit about the mission. We want to defend immigrant rights and human rights, civil rights, and just promote cultural diversity. Below is the website to CARECEN's main organization page and CARECEN's main Instagram page. Next slide, please. So Tessa and I are part of the CSU project. We serve several Southern California CSUs. We provide immigration legal services for students, faculty, and staff of CSUs and immediate relatives, which would be siblings, children, parents, and spouses. If you're a community member listening to this, you, of course, can make an appointment through just CARECEN, like the main organization. And that would also include alumni. We provide services for DACA renewals, naturalization, green cards, and other types of visa applications. However, we don't provide services for international student visas or employment-based visas. We do have a sister team that works at community colleges, and they provide services to community college all across California. And you book your appointment the same way you would through a CSU, but their team specifically serves students, faculty, and staff only. And we have created an Instagram page for our team, and this will include events and workshops for both CSU and community colleges. Next slide, please.
All right, I will take over here. Okay, so first, what is DACA? I'm sure most of you know what DACA is, which is why you signed up for this presentation, but just a little brief slide on this. So DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It was a program that Obama started in 2012, and it allows for certain people to that came into the United States as young children who have no serious criminal history and have completed some educational requirements. It allows those individuals to have certain protections under the law. DACA would be able to give people work authorization, a social security number, deferred action from deportation for the period of time that they actually have the DACA. And so what that means is essentially, as long as you don't get into any big trouble, we're going to leave you alone as far as it goes with deportation. Also at the beginning of the program, what we call the 2012 version of DACA, there was something called Advance Parole, which we're going to get into later in the presentation, but it was an opportunity for DACA recipients to request permission to leave the US and return back to the US. So that was a program that that is for other people as well within immigration law, but specifically DACA as well. It was a part of DACA in the beginning, but DACA has never, in any variation of DACA has never had a pathway to citizenship, but hopefully in the future it might. Next slide. Okay, so here's a very brief history of DACA. I'm not going to get too much into the nitty gritty of all the legal cases in the past, just more of like the highlights for you guys. I don't want to overwhelm you with a bunch of like legal terminology. So at first, June 2012, the program was started by Obama. It existed pretty much as it was intended throughout those next 5 years until President Trump came into power. And in September of 2017, he announced that he wanted to terminate DACA. This attempt at termination immediately led to a lot of lawsuits being filed all over the country. So during this time that Trump had tried to end DACA, but before those lawsuits were handled, what essentially happened is no new DACA applications were being accepted. So that means no initial DACA applications, but people were allowed to renew their applications as long as they've already had DACA in the past. And it also ended people's opportunity to apply for advance parole. So it was just kind of like a half version of what DACA really was. So we had the 2012 version of DACA, which was the full program where anybody who was eligible could apply. And then we had the 2017 version, which is the more reduced program. So in June of 2020, that's whenever the Supreme Court case came out that basically says that President Trump's attempt to end DACA was done administratively defective. So that just means that basically it just wasn't done right. They didn't follow all of the rules in order to properly dismantle the program. So that means that DACA should be fully restored back to the 2012 version, like everything that we had just said on the last slide. But that case did not say that DACA could never be terminated. It just says you failed to do it this time because you didn't follow the rules, but it did not say DACA is safe for forever. So that's a very important takeaway from that case is that it didn't eliminate the option for DACA to be terminated in the future. And then of course the Trump administration later said that they were going to continue trying to terminate the program. So after June 2020, after this Supreme Court case came out up until just recently, USCIS, which is US Citizenship and Immigration Services, that is the agency that actually takes these applications, these immigration applications, and processes them. They basically ignored what the Supreme Court told them to do. So they did not begin accepting new applications. They didn't even update their website after the Supreme Court case came out for a very long time. And they just essentially mostly proceeded as if they just didn't hear what the Supreme Court said. They did partially reopen advance parole, not to the way that it was supposed to be for DACA recipients, but they opened it for people to apply for advance parole only in exceptional circumstances. And an example that they give for an exceptional circumstance is, say you are very ill and you need life-saving medical treatment that is not available in the US, so you have to immediately go to another country for this life-saving medical treatment. That would qualify as an exceptional circumstance. And so obviously that's not something that happens that often for individuals. So it's essentially like mostly advanced parole just doesn't really exist for DACA recipients. Another big change that they made just randomly out of the blue was normally DACA is good for 2 years, but just all of a sudden randomly they decided to change it to where it was only going to be good for 1 year. With essentially no notice to this. They just said starting today, even applications that were already pending and submitted before today, anything approved after today is going to be approved for only 1 year. The other thing to that is they did not change the fee. They kept it the $495 filing fee, but are giving you half of the benefit. So it's essentially like doubling the cost of this form of relief. Another thing they also did was they said that they will start rejecting applications for DACA renewals that were submitted more than 150 days before the person's current DACA is set to expire. So used to, we could file very, very early and then they'll just get to it when they get to it, you know. But now they've said if you file 151 days or more before your current DACA is set to expire, we will reject your application. And what rejection means is they're not making a decision, they're not giving a denial, they are just saying, nope, too early, we're not even looking at it. And they just send it right back to you. They send back your filing fee, so you're not losing your money, but your money's out of your hands for a long time until you actually get that rejection back. So that's another big change they kind of made in this time period. On November 14th, a federal judge in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York ruled that Chad Wolf, who has been acting as the Secretary of Homeland Security, ruled that basically he was not put in his position properly. So again, Trump administration kind of not following the rules of how things are supposed to be handled with certain processes. So because Chad Wolf was not put in his position properly as Secretary of Homeland Security, which is over the immigration agency that's relevant here, because he was not put in his place properly, any of the decisions that he made as secretary are void. Well, actually, that's part of the next slide. So basically, first, he says, the judge said on November 14th, Chad Wolf was not put in his place properly. And then we had to wait until the next slide to find out what that actually meant. So next slide, please. I got a little ahead of myself. I got excited. So the judge said that on November 14th, hey, you did not get in your place properly. So on December 14th is when we found out what that actually meant. So what are the remedies? So what is the court going to do about it that he wasn't put in place properly? So here's why you're here today, to figure out where are we now. So on December 4th, that federal judge came back out and said, all right, you have to begin accepting these initial DACA applications like you were supposed to this whole time. You're supposed to go back to those 2-year renewals. So none of this 1-year thing that you've been doing randomly. You're supposed to begin accepting advance parole applications for DACA recipients back to the version that it should have been the whole time. And again, we'll get in a little bit more on advance parole in a few slides. Well, the judge also ordered any individual that got one of the 1-year DACAs in these last few months, they have to go back and add another year. So if you or somebody you know only got a 1-year DACA, they are supposed to go back and add another year to it proactively on their end. So you shouldn't have to do anything on your end to get that additional year. Another thing that I especially loved with this judge was that they specifically said, you have to make these changes to your website within 3 calendar days. So last time with the Supreme Court, the USCIS just never changed their website. And so because they never changed their website, a lot of people didn't know what was going on. Like, okay, are you going to pay attention? Are you going to obey what the Supreme Court says or not? Like, what do we do? People were kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. So luckily with this judge made it a part of the order, like, hey, you have to do this website change within 3 days. And they did. So on December 7th, they did update their website to reflect that change. And specifically what the website says is on the next slide. So this is a just like a screenshot of what is on the website. The link is at the very bottom there, and I'll also send this in the resources that I send out today. But basically it says almost exactly what was on the last slide. Basically, the judge said we have to do this, so this is what we're doing. What's important to note is all of my like red notes here. So first off, it says they are accepting first-time requests for DACAs. What's really important is that they say they're accepting the requests. So that means that they are going to take those applications. They'll take them, but it doesn't say that they'll actually process them. They're not saying that they're actually going to make a decision or, you know, approve or deny any of these. They're just saying, we will accept them. You can mail them to us. It does not expressly say that they will process them. And that's what's extremely important to note here, that they are saying just the first part. And it also mentions all the other changes that we had talked about on the last slide, but the other thing that it does not mention, that whole 150-day rule thing that we talked about, it doesn't say anything about that. So anybody who is wanting to renew their DACA still needs to wait until they're within that 150-day window before their current DACA expires. So it's saying USCIS will, you know, do whatever they can to give anybody who got one of those 1-year DACAs the 1-year extension. But also note, it doesn't give a time period of when they're actually going to do that. And I think that's also a really important thing to know, because it's like, yes, they're going to do it, but are they going to do it within the next couple of months, or are they going to wait until it gets really close to that 1-year expiration before they do the extension? So, so it is important for people to know that there is no, currently at least, no 1-year extension like deadline for them to do their part of it. And then of course, in the big block down there at the end, they're saying that they, you know, immigration is going to comply with this rule from the court, this order from the court, while it remains in effect. But DHS may seek relief from the order, which means that they may appeal. And I will elaborate a little bit more on this, and I think it's in like 2 slides. Okay, so next slide, please. Okay, so there's the case that's coming out of Texas that many of you probably have heard about. This what can kind of screw things up for us, unfortunately. So the Southern District of Texas currently has another case pending about DACA that has the potential to effectively undo everything that happened good out of this New York case. So so this New York case, this Texas case, even though they're out of those specific specific states, they are district courts, which means that any order that comes out of the court could apply, you know, countrywide, and not necessarily just Texas and not necessarily just New York. So that's important to kind of note of like, wait, why is New York getting to decide this? Why is Texas getting to decide this? Also, there's been a few other states that have joined in on the Texas case as well. There is a hearing that is currently set for December 22nd, and we do expect that the ruling out of that hearing would be released pretty soon after. It does sound like that case could undo you know, the good benefits that this New York case did. Next slide. So if you're somebody who already has DACA, Just to kind of summarize and more neatly, like what I've said in the previous slides, yes, you can still renew. Again, we don't really know what's going to happen with the Texas case, but yes, you can still renew. Just make sure that you don't renew more than 150 days before your current DACA expires. If you are wanting to set up an appointment with us, feel free, like you're welcome to set up your appointment before that 150 days. You don't have to wait, because with all of our appointments, we always screen for other forms of relief. So you might be there for a DACA, but we will always do a screening to see if you might be eligible for something else in addition to DACA or in lieu of DACA. And so some things that we would screen for are very time sensitive. So we wouldn't want somebody to wait a really long time for that 150-day window when they could be eligible for something else that their time is running out to apply for. I hope that makes sense. So don't feel like you have to wait to have your like initial appointment with us until then. You just have to wait to file it until then. And then of course, if you already have the DACA, you may be eligible to apply for advance parole. And then if approved, if you apply for your DACA renewal, if it's approved, then your renewal would be for 2 years instead of 1 year. All right, next. All right, so switching gears here a little bit. So I feel like this is probably where a lot of you, what a lot of you are also here for. So what are the DACA requirements? So these requirements are the case for everyone, whether you've had DACA before or not. Everybody has to meet these expectations. So first off, you have to have been born after June 15th, 1981. So not on, you have to be born after that date. So if your birth date is on that date or before, unfortunately, you are not at all eligible for DACA. You had to have come to the United States before you turned 16th. So again, your 16th birthday, not good enough. It has to have been at least the day before your 16th birthday. You had to have been physically present in the United States on June 2012. And when you apply for DACA, you had to have had no lawful status on June 15th, 2012. And that June 15th, 2012, you're going to be seeing that whole June 15th a lot. And that's the date that DACA started. So that's why that's relevant there. So where it says you have to have had no lawful status on June 15th, 2012, that means you had to have been undocumented, essentially. So maybe you came in on a visitor's visa, and that first 6 months that you were here on the visitor's visa, you were here with lawful status. You were here lawfully on your visitor's visa. So if you did come in on a visa, that visa would have had to have expired before June 15, 2012. Otherwise, you would not be eligible for DACA. And so if you are somebody who did come in on a tourist visa, we would need to discuss those details at your intake consultation to make sure that you'd be eligible on that. You also have to have continuously resided in the United States since June 15th, 2007 up until the present day. So if you entered the United States after June 15th, 2007, even a single day, just like everything else, even if it's a single day after, you are not eligible for DACA. You have to have been here since that date and continuously. So yeah, maybe you came here in 2006 and stayed till 2009, but then you went back to your home country for a couple of years and then came back. You are not eligible. You have to have continuously been here the entire time. You also have to meet certain educational requirements or be honorably discharged from the U.S. Armed Forces if you don't meet those educational requirements. You can't be convicted of certain crimes. So like, not stopping at a stop sign is not going to be an issue, but obviously some other like serious criminal issues are issues. And then also there's an age thing. So a lot of you, especially like the freshmen, were probably too young to apply for DACA when the program first started in 2012 and before it ended in, or partially ended in 2017 because of this requirement. So you have to be at least 15 years old to apply for DACA. Or sometimes you can be younger if you have some sort of history being in immigration court. But for most people, it is 15. You have to be at least 15 years old to apply. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we talked before about all the great benefits of DACA. You get work authorization, you get your social security card, you get your protection from deportation. Like, these are all great benefits, but with every benefit, there's always a risk. So with applying, especially with applying for the first time, because for the first time, that's the first time that you're putting your information out there for immigration. So you're directly giving immigration all of your personal information, your address, your phone number, how they can, find you, essentially. So just know that there is always a risk with anything. They're not technically supposed to be using that information improperly, but there's always risks. Also, if you apply and are denied, they're not giving you your money back. So you could be out of $495, which if you don't already have DACA, then you don't have work authorization. So getting that $495 is really, really difficult. So there is that risk of losing that money. And of course, there's always the risk of the program ending again. So you're not even going to get that benefit if your application isn't approved by then or something like that. So just remember that there are risks involved, even though there are obviously a lot of benefits as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what documents do I need? So I'll go over this briefly, but also whenever I send out the resources after the presentation, we will include a list of this as well. So first off, you got to prove who you are. You got to prove you are who you say you are, and your age, because of course the age is really important. You can't be born before that date in June 1981. So your birth certificate is great, but of course your birth certificate isn't going to have an updated picture. So your birth certificate plus your driver's license or some other official photo ID, or your passport, your school IDs help. If you have a military ID, anything like that would be would satisfy that requirement. So then you also have to prove that you met the educational requirements. So your current schools, transcripts, your letter of enrollment, if you're currently enrolled in school, your GED certificate or your high school diploma, or military records if you fall into that category. And next. So proof that you entered before 2016, before you turned 16, and then also proof of presence before June 15th, 2007 up to, and on June 15th, 2012. A lot of this stuff that I'm going to start talking about really blurs all together because a lot of documents can prove a lot of different things. So proof that you entered before you're 16 and proof that you were here before 2000 can be proven in the same document. So like your school transcripts are excellent for that. So so one big thing I always tell people is if and when you are requesting your school transcripts, specifically ask them for the cumulative record, because that cumulative record is not going to show just, yes, I graduated high school. It's going to show you were enrolled through all of elementary, through all of middle school, through all of high school. It shows that continuous presence through all of those years. And what's also especially awesome is if you won any perfect attendance awards, those are great. So yeah, school transcripts really, really help proving your physical presence here in the United States through those years. So we always request the full records for those. And depending on what school district you went to, some are very fast at getting those records to you, some are not. So, so if you are wanting to set up an appointment with us and you haven't been able to get in yet or whatever, go ahead and request those records from your school so you don't have to wait. So, okay, so back to the left side. So proof of entry before you turn 16, the school records, like I said, vaccine records are also really great for that. And if you came in on a visa, or something with your passport would have a stamp, you would have what's called an I-94 card, and of course the visa itself. So those are all great to prove like the actual time that you entered. Then over here on the right, some other things that you can show for the proof of presence: bank statements, pay stubs, bills, medical records, any sort of official document. So anything that can kind of show date and location in your name, essentially. And next slide. And then this one, again, kind of blurs with the previous slide too. So you have to prove your continuous presence from June 15th, 2007 up until filing. So all those things that we talked about before, as well as like school certificates, awards, maybe you went to like Vacation Bible School in the summer, or you participate in a Bible study, or you've been married or divorced, including those certificates. Your taxes prove you were here. Your employment records prove that you were here. Pay stubs. And of course, vaccine records again. So for people, sometimes people aren't really that great at keeping their own records. Moms normally are very, very great at doing that. So we encourage you, talk to mom. Mom probably has a lot of these records. Definitely, reach out to whoever you need to reach out to, whatever organization you volunteered with or whatever, to try to get some of these records. Some people just really don't have a lot of records. And then with those people, we have to get more creative. So I've done things before where somebody was like, well, I participated in a half marathon, and I've looked them up by their name and found out their running time and stuff, which was done with a tracker. So it proved that that person was physically inside of the United States. So we can get kind of creative if somebody's like, I just can't figure out anything. Let us know if you're like, there's a few months where there's just nothing. Talk to us. We can help you get kind of creative on what sort of documentation to provide for that time period. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so what if you have a criminal record? So the specific requirement says that you have not been convicted of a felony, or what they consider a significant misdemeanor, or 3 or more misdemeanors, and also that you don't otherwise pose a threat to national security, essentially. So what a significant misdemeanor is, it's kind of vague. So a felony is classified as a felony, that's clear. But a significant misdemeanor versus another, I guess, non-significant misdemeanor is really up to the officer, essentially. So, but we do have some general guidelines of like what kind of constitutes that. So if you do have any criminal history at all, please, go ahead and start getting these documents. Get dispositions from the court. So whatever court you went to that had the court case, get what's called a court disposition from them, where it shows everything that happened with the case and what actually resulted from it. What were you charged with? What were you convicted of? And did you fulfill all of those requirements? Did you pay the fee? Did you go complete your probation, stuff like that? If you got something expunged from your record, get certified copies of that. So definitely get the related documentation. So yeah, like something that would be more of like a significant misdemeanor. Sometimes like DUIs are considered misdemeanors, depending. So that would be something that would be obviously a significant one. But everybody's situation is different. So this is kind of one that's a little bit more not as straightforward as some of the other requirements. So if you do have criminal history at all, set up an appointment with us. We can talk about it. We can see if you're eligible or not. Next slide. All right, what is advance parole? All right, I've been teasing advance parole, so now here we are. Okay, so advance parole is permission to travel outside of the US and actually return into the United States after you've left. Because normally with DACA, if you leave the United States and are trying to come back, once you leave the United States, your DACA no longer exists. You have abandoned your DACA if you leave. So, so getting advance parole is basically like, hey, I'm going to step out for a minute. Can I come back? So you're not abandoning your DACA status. So for specifically for individuals who have DACA that are wanting advance parole, it has to be for one of three reasons. It has to be a humanitarian reason. An example of that would be you have a close relative that's very, very ill and is likely to soon pass away in your home country and you need to visit them. That would be a humanitarian reason. Educational reasons, if there's a study abroad program with your school, that could qualify. Some things, it doesn't necessarily have to be with your school, but it does have to meet certain requirements. And then an employment or professional opportunity. So maybe your job is requiring you to go to another country for some training or meetings or something. So those are the only three reasons why somebody with DACA could have potentially advance parole approved. And next. So what are the benefits? So this is a little bit tricky because this is something else that is potentially going to change soon. So normally, leaving and coming back to the United States with advance parole counts as a valid entry to the United States, like a legal entry. And if you have a legal entry, if you have somebody petitioning for you, like a family-based petition, where you're an immediate relative of that person, that valid entry could help you significantly because it could mean that you could have your interview in the United States instead of having to go back to your home country for your interview. And there's a typo, sorry. To be considered an immediate relative for the purposes of this, you have to be the parent of a US citizen who is over 21, the spouse of a US citizen, or the minor unmarried child of a US citizen. So those are the only people that could benefit from this, is if one of those people petitioned for you and you have a valid entry, then that could be very, very good. The hiccup to this is that there is a proposed rule coming out that could kind of change that and kind of say, well, advanced parole doesn't count for that anymore. It won't count as a valid entry to allow people to have their interviews in the United States. So this is a huge benefit, but it might go away soon. So that's important to note. Okay, and the next slide. So as with everything, there are risks to advance parole too. Of course, there's the great benefit of potentially helping you with a family-based petition, and also, you know, the benefit of travel and the things that does for an individual. But the risks are, you could file for this. It's not cheap. It's a total of $660 currently, and you can, if they deny it, you lose that money. And you've already, you know, put in your money for the DACA itself, so it's not cheap. It is very, very discretionary. So even if you fulfill all of the requirements, the agent who is reviewing your application could just decide to deny it just because they feel like denying it. So so it's important to note that it, you know, because it is discretionary, just because like you should get it doesn't mean you will get it, essentially. Also, unfortunately, we're still dealing with a global pandemic. There could be other travel restrictions happening with certain countries and airlines and all of that could risk you getting back to the United States before your advance parole permission expires, you know, or being able to leave in the first place and get to the destination that you're wanting to get to. And then also, because DACA is still not firmly placed in law and still could have the potential at another attempt at termination, that could happen, and it could be terminated while you're outside of the country. And if that happens, you're not going to be able to get back in. Also, even if you do have approved advance parole, everything's good, you passed all the bars that you have to pass, they could still deny you reentry to the United States. That person looking at your permission to enter that would, you know, open the door to let you back in, definitely still has the ability to say, nope, I'm not letting you in. And if that's the case, you're outside of the country, and would have a very, very hard time getting back in lawfully. This is not something that happens frequently, but it is something that is a risk, and so it's something that people really, really have to think about. Like, do the benefits outweigh the risks here? And then, yeah, okay. So next slide. All right. So how to make an appointment? So I'll let Veronica take over here.
Alrighty, hi everyone. So when it comes to CSU students, faculty, or staff, or their immediate relatives, and this does not include alumni, there is a booking system where you can book your appointment. I will give you the heads up right now that we are really booked, so it might not be until January when you see the next opening. Please be patient with us. We are a small team, but we are doing our best to help you guys out with this. I would say in the meantime, if you do think you are eligible, it is a good idea to start gathering all the documents that were listed in the presentation. For those of you who go to a community college, if you're a student, faculty, or staff, you also have services at your community college, and you would use the same booking website as the one listed for CSU. For anyone who's a community member or not affiliated with a CSU or community college, we have an office at the San Fernando Valley. The phone number is listed below. You would be talking to Alexa and she'll help you out. Again, when it comes to the Valley office, we are getting booked pretty quick and getting a lot of phone calls, so you might have to leave a voicemail and she'll call you back. And when it comes to people in downtown LA, you can book an appointment through that phone number. And they also have a website, which I'll try sharing below, and it's specifically for DACA. I'll share it in the chat.
Thank you, Veronica. Also, I want to note for just because there are a very large number of community colleges, if your specific community college is not listed, then you can book with any community college. Do not book with the CSU because we're technically a separate team, but you can book with any community college. Another thing I want to mention is if you sign up for an appointment, please actually attend that appointment. If, of course, things come up, we're dealing with the holidays, y'all are dealing with finals right now, and there's so many things going on. So of course it happens sometimes where people cannot attend. That's totally fine. But if you are not able to make your appointment, please go back through to your confirmation email and cancel your appointment. Like Veronica said, we are booking very far out. And because of that, if people are booking appointments and not attending them, then that's an opportunity for somebody else to get help that has vanished, essentially. So please cancel your appointments if you cannot attend them. All right, next slide. Perfect. Okay, so before we do campus announcements, I want to say one thing too that I think I kind of mentioned like before the recording started, but it's important to note that this information that we're talking about today is what's in play today. Like, you can kind of tell through immigration law, things change very, very frequently. So if you're watching this presentation after today, if you're watching it on the YouTube link months from now, who knows what will be relevant at that point. So just know that this presentation is relevant today, and the information could change later. So always make sure that you talk to a legal representative, somebody who's a licensed legal representative, like a licensed attorney or a legal assistant who works with a licensed attorney about a case before filing anything. So be very, very careful about who you're filing anything with, and make sure that they are actually licensed. Okay, campus announcements. Okay, I don't know if anybody from Channel Islands is here, but if you are here, you can unmute yourselves and give a quick announcement.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Please do make sure to fill out the link here that I'll put in the chat, and that is listed in the PowerPoint if you are a CSUCI student. And please do make sure to check out our resources at our MDC website for our MOD program, which is for our undocumented students at CSUCI. Thank you.
Thank you. Next slide. All right, CSUN, your turn.
Hi everyone, my name is Madison. I'm the Dream Center Supervisor at CSUN. We know that this can take a toll on your mental health, so we did want to highlight some mental health resources. We have a counselor from University Counseling Services, Dr. Elizabeth Poloskov, who hosts drop-in hours with the Dream Center, and they take place from Thursdays 11 a.m. to noon. Her last session will be on December 17th, and we won't have it again until the spring semester starts, but University Counseling Services is available if you need any support. We also wanted to promote our undocumented student support group, also hosted by Dr. Elizabeth Poloskov through University Counseling Services. It's called Here to Stay, and if you're interested in taking part in it, you can go ahead and contact University Counseling Services also. We are having appointments at the Dream Center. You can meet with a student or a student assistant or a professional staff. So you can meet with me or Daniela Barcenas, who is our Dream Center manager. And if you want an appointment, you can go ahead and email us at dreamcenter@csun.edu or call us. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook. So go ahead and follow us to stay updated on our events and resources.
Thank you, Madison. And next slide. So we advertise this at multiple campuses. So Veronica and I just do CSUN and Channel Islands as far as other campuses that we serve, but we know that there's a lot of people that go to other CSUs. If there are any Dream Center coordinators or any Dream Center staffs from other CSUs, please feel free to unmute yourselves if you have any questions or announcements or updates for your campuses.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ana Miriam Barragan, and I'm from Costa Dominguez Hills. We do offer a lot of services as well, like very similar to other Dream Centers as well. I'm going to go ahead and add all my information on the chat. Thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, go ahead.
This is Luz Borjon from the Dreamers Resource Center at Cal State LA. Thank you again for allowing us to introduce ourselves, and thank you for inviting us and our students, faculty, and staff to this presentation. And I will also put my information in the chat.
Thank you. Any other campuses that are here? Okay. All right. Next slide. Now, questions.